An ordinary guy showcased his extraordinary skill on Britain's Got Skill, a voice that touched millions and a story that related to the struggles of everyday people. Paul Potts, the vocally reserved phone salesman, won over audiences with his understated charisma and musical talent, which belied his humble origins. After his meteoric climb to fame on Britain's Got Talent, though, what became of Paul Potts? Paul Potts' life is uncovered in this forgotten story, which delves into the highs and lows of his meteoric climb to prominence. What was abandoned by him? Even while Britain's Got Talent has produced many famous faces, there is one contestant who truly rose to the top. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the life of this incredible star. Before we get into what happened to Paul Potts, let's take a look at his early years. Paul's birthplace was Kingswood. On October 13, 1970 in Bristol. He and his family spent his formative years in the fish ponds area. His dad, Roland, drove buses, while his mom, Yvonne, worked as a supermarket clerk. Paul had a cousin, 2 brothers, and a sister when he was a kid. During his younger years, Paul attended classes at St. Mary Redcliffe, Temple University, where he discovered his passion for music. In addition to singing in many Bristol church choirs, including Christ Church, he participated in choir activities at Chester Park Junior School. When Paul was a kid, he dealt with school bullying by getting into music. Feeling better and stronger, he benefited from it. Upon graduating from college in 1987, Paul launched a firm, a variety of positions primarily in retail settings including supermarkets and drugstores. Depending on the details, he may have worked part-time at Debenhams in addition to his tenures at Waitrose and Tesco. Like his humble beginnings, Paul's early employment circumstances reflected his modest social and economic status. Around 1993, Paul Potts attended the University of Plymouth and graduated with a BA in Humanities with honors from St. Mark and St. John College. Although it may be surprising to hear, Paul had a brief stint in politics. He entered politics 3 years later in 1996 and went on to win a council by-election, to run for the Bristol City Council seat representing the Eastville district as a Liberal Democrat. However, his plans were derailed by life's unforeseen circumstances. Career history: Paul got his start in the workforce in 1999, playing supporting roles with the amateur company B Opera. His next year saw him performing as the Herald and the Prince of Persia in Giacomo Puccini's world-famous opera Turandot. From then, he rose through the ranks and eventually landed leading roles in performances. Paul demonstrated his talent and commitment by starring in a spectrum of plays. He performed the role of Don Basilio in Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro in the year 2000. In Giuseppe Verdi's Don Carlos the following year, he played the role of Don Carlos. He demonstrated his flexibility in 2003 when he played Don Ottavio in Mozart's Don Giovanni. And Ramphis in Ada, these images demonstrated his growing skill and dedication to his craft. Paul performed as Chevalier des Grieux in a May 2003 production of Puccini's Manon Lescaut at London Southgate Opera Company. His previous opera roles were a departure from this one. His performance improved when he stunned a crowd of 15,000 with a small ensemble from the Royal Philharmonic. Then there was the solo tour he did in throughout his time spent studying music in northern Italy. A serious health scare befell Paul Potts just before a crucial performance. A rapid deterioration in his health occurred, culminating in the discovery of an adrenal tumor during his recovery from a ruptured appendix. Despite these concerns about health, Paul, despite his health difficulties, was adamant about performing in Ada as scheduled. He hid his issues under a fantastic performance. Paul subsequently underwent surgery to eradicate the tumor. Paul suffered yet another setback in 2003 when he fractured his collarbone and suffered whiplash in a bike accident. He was already in a precarious financial position before this catastrophic accident rendered him unable to work. Paul chose to make a significant career shift in response to these issues. He has left the music industry in search of stability, specifically a regular employment, so he and his wife Jules can afford to live comfortably. Paul transitioned to a new career path that prioritized financial security and put his singing career on pause for an extended period. He began to see his aspiration of performing on stage as nothing more than a fading memory, signaling the conclusion of an era in his life. He adjusted to his new situation and realized that his acting days were finished. Despite the difficulties Paul was experiencing, he could always count on his wife's support. In what ways was Paul wed? Difficulties in marriage: Paul Potts' wife Julianne, and he began dating in 2001. the year the internet was made available to the public. They became fast friends after meeting in an online chat room, and their friendship has since transcended the boundaries of the internet. Following their initial online connection, Paul and Jules decided to meet in person, which greatly improved their relationship. They were so infatuated with one another and had come this far in May 2003 that they chose to tie the knot. Because of this, the couple became even more committed to one another after exchanging wedding vows. Paul frequently expresses his affection for his wife and highlights her importance in his life. Crucial juncture in his life, he makes a joke about how Jules finds humor in his strange actions and habits, finding more humor in them than in himself. Her humor and unwavering encouragement kept him grounded and authentic as his fame grew. Jules and Paul have been an item for quite some time, and Jules has been Paul's rock through thick and thin. Working hard and friendly, Paul is an asset to any team. Paul has always made Jules feel special, and the two of them have an unbreakable bond. Despite the couple's strong desire to start a family, financial difficulties prevented them from doing so. Although the specific reasons for their decision to forego having children are not disclosed in publicly available records, it is evident that financial considerations were significant. Nonetheless, Paul has stated that his wish to have a family is still very much alive. Paul Potts had a turning point in his life when he was 37 years old, when he lost a lot of confidence. This was the great opportunity, Paul's big break. Plus, he had second thoughts about whether or not to attend a TV program audition. On a pivotal day in his modest Port Talbot apartment, he was troubled by this decision. As part of his duties as a Carphone warehouse area manager, Paul was abruptly silenced. A pop-up with the image of the renowned Judge Simon Cowell suddenly appeared on his computer screen while he was engrossed in calculating figures. There was a form for the renowned talent show Britain's Got Talent in this window as well. Paul was intrigued by this impromptu opportunity to participate in a contest. He was interested in competing since he and his wife Jules could use the money from the award to improve their financial situation. Paul had to take 7 months off work after breaking his collarbone in a bike accident. This was just one of many problems that had plagued their life. Because he was self-conscious about his age, appearance, and musical preferences, Paul battled with a chronic lack of self-confidence, which cast doubt on his capacity to compete on the show. The idea that TV appearances were reserved for those who fulfilled social beauty standards began to worry him. A watershed moment in Paul's life occurred when he encountered this inner turmoil. Prior to reaching a final choice, he completed the application. On the fly, he tossed a coin to see what would happen, and he chose to let fate decide. With a head, you could submit the entry form. With a tail, you could cancel it. Due to a lucky break, Paul chose to enter Britain's Got Talent when a coin toss indicated heads. This seemingly strange decision altered his life's trajectory. There was a great deal of anxiety and nervousness on the day of his trial. Previous judges were cold and heartless, and the rejection buzzers sounded harshly one after another. The crowd felt bad for Paul's performance because they booed the performer before him. Despite the terrifying circumstances, Paul maintained his composure. He then handed the tracking tape to the crew behind the scenes and instructed them to select the world-famous 7th track, Nessun Dorma. This is the starting point. Paul's adventure in BGT. Paul, clad in a sharp suit, strode nervously onto the stage. He faced the esteemed judges Piers Morgan, Amanda Holden, and Simon Cowell. Before he lost his self-assurance, this man had the incredible ability to enchant audiences around the globe, and this performance had the makings of a watershed event in his life. Paul captivated the audience with his rendition of Nessun Dorma from Puccini's opera Turandot as the event began. His powerful and moving tenor voice carried throughout the hall, captivating those who heard it. It was obvious that the performance touched the judges, particularly Simon Cowell. After Paul finished performing, the audience demonstrated their gratitude by giving him a standing ovation. By then, it was obvious that the judges had reached a unanimous decision. Paul's incredible adventure on the show began here. Paul persevered and met formidable opponents in the semifinals. Putting himself out there in front of a large audience to showcase his talents was nerve-wracking and dangerous. Paul still managed to put on another riveting performance, demonstrating his unfaltering commitment to his art. His ideas regarding standing ovations from the audience, and the judges for time to say goodbye guaranteed his spot in the final battle, where he faced off against other talented musicians. The tension level reached on his last stage performance, Paul delivered another breathtaking rendition of the iconic Nessun Dorma. His performance was truly remarkable, mesmerizing the judges and audience alike with his extraordinary skill and profound knowledge of the song. Impressed by his performance, the judges ultimately chose him as the winner of the first season of Britain's Got Talent. Paul was frugal with his money. He waited 6 months after achieving success before deciding to leave Carphone Warehouse, despite having signed a massive deal worth £1 million. The yearly salary Paul received from Carphone Warehouse was relatively low, with the majority coming from commission. Following his triumph on Britain's Got Talent, he took a 6-month leave from the office. This win marked a turning point in his personal and professional life. His extraordinary talents were acknowledged worldwide, catapulting him from relative obscurity to international fame and adored over the globe. Not only did he showcase his incredible singing abilities, but his story also demonstrated the profound impact that talent shows can have on individuals, enabling commoners to accomplish extraordinary feats. Disputes and adversities, Paul's rise through the ranks in his professional and personal life was not without its share of controversies and challenges. His performance on Britain's Got Talent garnered both admiration and controversy. Some critics felt that Paul's operatic background was at odds with the show's mission to discover new talent. They were concerned that his varied background might run counter to the program's aim of discovering artists who had never been compensated for their work. Those who disliked Paul questioned whether he was a genuine hidden talent or someone who had already broken into the theater industry. Paul took this criticism particularly to heart since, despite his success, he had worked tirelessly on his craft for years without compensation, and he had funded all of his vocal lessons and other projects in the past out of his own pocket. They were concerned that his presence on the show would detract from its intended purpose due to his past actions and experiences, which they claimed were at conflict with the show's goals. Opera realm making do with what he has. His show in Italy wasn't about turning a profit, it was about pursuing his dreams, despite the many obstacles he had to overcome. In reaction to the prevailing problems, Paul took to the media to express his thoughts, claiming that he had not accepted payment for any of his previous appearances because he had personally funded his voice training and all of his projects. He described his artistic journey, which includes his time in Italy, as being motivated more by love and devotion than by money. Despite frequently changing employment due to low remuneration from performances, he emphasized that his commitment to his work remained the main thing that drove him. Paul had more than just complaints at work. He had to cope with persistent worry about money throughout his career as he worked his way up through a number of retail and customer service professions. He was talented and worked hard, but his financial troubles were still too much for him to manage. Every new opportunity seemed promising at first, but there were more problems that needed solving. He struggled to balance his artistic aspirations with his financial woes. Paul's personal life was also filled with turmoil. In the midst of his rising stardom and the pressures of maintaining healthy relationships, he struggled to strike a balance between his private life and the relentless dedication required by his profession. In spite of the fact that Paul had to cope with significant issues, he displayed remarkable resilience, which was on display in his final triumph on the TV show Britain's Got Talent. Nevertheless, this triumph did not immediately alleviate all of Paul's problems. In fact, he continued to feel unsafe and lonely after agreeing to a good deal, £1 million deal. He was still concerned about finances. Paul's responsible decision not to leave Carphone Warehouse immediately demonstrates his maturity. It took him 6 months to decide to leave, revealing that despite his successes, he still struggles with finances. Throughout his journey, Paul encountered numerous emotional and professional challenges. Winning the talent show was a major accomplishment for him. It required years of sacrifice, selflessness, and determination to overcome doubts. It's nearly perfect, but there is a minor language error that needs to be corrected. His career took off after this. His career after Britain's Got Talent, Paul wasted no time capitalizing on the momentum he had earned from winning the show. He published his first record, One Chance, which featured a blend of classical arias, jazz standards, and pop songs. The album was an immediate smash, topping the UK albums chart and catapulting Paul to stardom. His rendition of Nessun Dorma, a famous Puccini opera, from his audition was a highlight, and the record itself was a testament to his incredible talent and motivational story. Paul's passionate singing endeared him to audiences all over the globe, and his career flourished beyond the boundaries of Britain. Although opera isn't often associated with the United States, many music lovers enjoyed his performances. Paul's voice had the power to transcend language and national boundaries, and he became famous all over the world. In the years following his breakthrough, Paul Potts continued to hone his craft. His subsequent albums demonstrated his versatility and skill, proving that he was more than a one-hit wonder. In 2009, he finally released his long-awaited album, Motivated. Recorded in two cities, Stockholm and Prague, over the course of nearly a year, this musical masterpiece featured compositions from musicals, operas, and well-known film scores, appealing to a diverse audience of Paul Potts' fans. After Paul parted ways with Simon Cowell's Psycho record label, a new chapter in his career began with his third album, Cinema Paradiso. On this album, he had the opportunity to delve into themes from his previous films, which allowed him to expand his artistic horizons and breathe new life into these famous songs with his distinctive vocal abilities. Paul Potts' most recent album, Home, demonstrated his vocal prowess and devotion to his musical passion. Throughout his career in the music industry, Paul Potts has consistently demonstrated that his voice can captivate audiences. His newfound fame has allowed him to collaborate with other musicians and participate in private performances. In 2011, he released a special edition of Cinema Paradiso that included additional tracks and further demonstrated Paul's skill as an artist able to work with a variety of musical styles. His distinctive voice has made Paul a sought-after collaborator on numerous projects, and his influence on music extends well beyond his popularity. He became a global sensation after his Britain's Got Talent performance went viral in the United Kingdom, the United States, and South Korea. South Korean audiences were captivated by Paul's tenor voice and the intensity of his performances, which would go on to bring him acclaim on a global scale. Paul's recordings were well received in South Korea, where classical music is highly regarded for its beauty. Swiftly becoming a national celebrity, Paul's affection for South Korea blossomed after he expressed his admiration for the nation. This warm sentiment led him to consider South Korea his second home, an idea that resonated deeply with many. Paul's humility and friendliness, combined with his strong sense of belonging, made him a much-loved figure in South Korea. The original soundtrack of the hit Korean historical drama The Great Queen Sondeok featured Paul's singing of the song, "Is This the Place That You Said?", which demonstrated his command of the Korean language and moved many South Koreans to tears. The song's meteoric rise to fame further cemented Paul's position in South Korea, and he was even featured on a hit TV program there. His charismatic personality and interesting life story resonated with the public, making him a famous figure in South Korea. His series of live performances in the country was a major factor in his popularity there. Shows like Star King and Qualifications of Men gave him opportunities to discuss his experiences with the local audience and showcase his talents to a wider audience. In his autobiography, One Chance, Paul candidly recounted his extraordinary life, from his troubled and insecure childhood to his meteoric climb to operatic fame. Among the most intriguing anecdotes is the one about Paul's infamous audition in the shower, which he revealed after his tremendous success. His autobiography vividly describes how enthralling his rendition of Nessun Dorma was. Paul's audition for Britain's Got Talent marked a watershed moment in his life when he passionately performed this Puccini aria. This was before he became famous on the British talent show. Paul, like many others, suffered from nervousness and stage fright. He was forthright about the fact that he felt anxious before his performances on the big stage, even though he had practiced this area extensively in the car and the restroom. The performance that would change his life was on the show. In addition to discussing the impact of childhood bullying on Paul's life, the text delves into the personal stories of the singer and the challenges he has faced. On tour to promote the book, Paul revealed that he had endured constant verbal and physical bullying during his school years. In his 2013 memoir, he goes into great depth detailing the distressing details of this protracted ordeal that culminated in his hospitalization. The emotional toll of this relentless bullying persisted long after he stopped attending school, and Paul asserts that the impacts of bullying extend far beyond mere survival and forgetfulness. Sadly, some of the bullies who tormented Paul in school have now apologized and sought forgiveness. Fortunately, Paul has been receptive to these expressions of regret and contrition, which demonstrate how these experiences can permanently alter a person's sense of self-worth. Paul knows that memories of bullying may never go away, but that holding on to anger can stop personal growth and progress. So he chooses to forgive, which helps both himself and his former tormentors move forward. The idea of second chances is also emphasized in One Chance. Paul talks about how his life changed after winning Britain's Got Talent. Paul talked about a frightening recollection from his teenage years in his book. The culprit was a high-ranking person with a lot of authority and influence. He thinks about the chance he had to pursue his love of opera on an international level and meets fans who recognized him publicly. Even though it was a traumatic event, Paul did take away some hope from it. The most important thing he learned was that justice would ultimately win out in the end, even though he felt totally powerless and unable to defend himself when confronted with such authority. Despite the fact that the traumatic event was finally brought to justice, the perpetrator was apprehended, charged, and subsequently imprisoned. Paul still opted not to elaborate on the traumatic event after writing about it in the book. A well-known film was based on Paul's best-selling book, which he wrote about an incredibly personal and distressing event. Paul continues to deal with this issue behind closed doors, away from the scrutiny of the public. Through his writing, Paul not only brought attention to the horror of the event, but also emphasized the significance of acknowledging the resilience and determination required to overcome adversity. Promptly after he signed a publishing deal, he received offers from companies interested in adapting his narrative into a feature film, which was finally directed by David Frankel and shared the title with his book, One Chance. The film was an emotionally powerful and motivational look inside Paul's incredible journey. James Corden portrayed Paul Potts in the biopic One Chance. The film extensively covered Paul's life, from his early struggles and personal setbacks to his triumphant performances on Britain's Got Talent. The film examined numerous facets of Paul's life and offered viewers a glimpse into the emotional obstacles he encountered. Despite everything, Paul's net worth shocked fans. Net worth and charitable activities, a modest lifestyle has been maintained by Paul and his spouse, in contrast to some who become rich fast. Paul used to struggle to meet his financial obligations, but now he is financially secure and doesn't have to worry about tough times. Paul has a net worth of $15 million, which enables him to live comfortably. Paul continues to show his dedication to helping others through his charitable work, which extends beyond his successful career as an opera singer. His efforts demonstrate kindness and support for various causes, with a particular focus on children's charities. He has maintained the same good character throughout the years and continues to live in the same hometown where he did before he became famous. Paul has spent his life advocating for organizations that aim to better the lives of children. He has used his musical abilities and popularity to raise money and awareness for these important causes through numerous fundraising events, benefit performances, and charity galas. The Helen Foundation is a non-profit organization that Paul has shown his support for. Its mission is to promote arts education and encourage creativity in schools. Paul's involvement with this organization reflects his passion for the arts and his belief that creativity greatly influences learning, particularly in young people. Besides his work with children's charities and art education, Paul also dedicates his time and resources to cancer charities. Having faced health issues such as a burst appendix personally, Paul understands the importance of healthcare and the challenges that sick people face. Paul actively participates in fundraising events and campaigns to bring attention to cancer charities. Paul demonstrates his commitment to humanitarian causes by donating to disaster relief efforts and meeting the needs of refugees. He utilizes his powerful platform to bring attention to these important issues and encourages his supporters to donate to good causes. Paul is actively working to improve health and wellness by supporting cancer research and patient care. In addition to the substantial financial contributions, Paul embarked on a remarkable journey by walking from South Wales to London with a detour through South Korea. His motivation to walk such a difficult route was driven by his desire to assist the impoverished. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and click the next video that shows on your screen. Over $48,000 were donated to help build a rehabilitation center in Swansea, demonstrating Paul's concern for people's lives and the communities in which they reside.